We have all kinds of news to talk about today. We have several signings. We have the new class of the NHL's Hockey Hall of Fame for 2023, and we have some trade rumors discussing the Calgary Flames, Seattle Kraken, Detroit Red Wings, updates on Pierre-Luc Dubois, the Vancouver Canucks, some UFA rumors as well involving the Maple Leafs. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news to cover here today. First up, the big news of the day is we had the Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2023 announced around 4 o'clock Eastern Time, or 3 o'clock Eastern Time, today. And we had, I think it's fair to say, a few surprise members going in. Obviously, a pretty good-looking class. A few players still continue to get snubbed, but this year's class in the builder category include longtime NHL coach Ken Hitchcock, won the Stanley Cup, I think he's the fourth winningest coach in NHL history. Absolutely well-deserved honor. Coach for a long time, multiple levels, lots of success. I have no problem there. Ken Hitchcock, well-deserved. And Pierre Lacroix, who was a long-time NHL executive, was the GM of the Avalanche when they won the Stanley Cup. Of course, he went from the Nordiques organization when they moved to Colorado, and was the architect of that team that ended up winning the Stanley Cup shortly after relocating to the Colorado area into Denver. Pierre Lacroix, unfortunately, did pass away a few years ago, but obviously his family can induct him, and certainly well-deserved. I have no issues there whatsoever within the building category. Within the player category, we had first-time eligible first ballot Henrik Lundqvist. Absolutely no issues there. Lundqvist, to me, was a dominant goalie in his era. Has a great all-time record, save percentage, good record in the playoffs. Obviously was a standout in his position during several years of his career. So to me, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer all day, every day. I have no issues with the King going in here as first chance. It was a lot of goalies this time, though. Also, longtime goalie Tom Barrasso, also inducted, and same thing with Mike Vernon. I was a little bit surprised that Barrasso and Mike Vernon both got in ahead of Curtis Joseph. Now, I know some people swear that winning the Stanley Cup or having multiple Stanley Cups on your resume doesn't have a big impact for this. I think it does, because that's something that Curtis Joseph is missing. But like Mike Vernon has Stanley Cups on his resume, Joseph doesn't. To me, Joseph had a way stronger, longer career. I feel bad for him. That's definitely a major snub. Also in the player category as well, we have Pierre Turgeon. Now, Pierre Turgeon, longtime NHL player, captain on multiple franchises, was a dominant offensive player. I think out of all the players that are not in the Hall of Fame, I believe he has the most points. So that distinction will not go to another player. But Turgeon, I have no issues with him. And Caroline Ouellette, longtime dominant female Canadian hockey player, especially on the international stage. Also a dominant player in the CWHL. Was the first female player in that league to hit 300-point plateau. But like I said, long time Olympian, multiple gold and silver medals along the way. That was a dominant force in female hockey. I have no issues there. I do feel bad for some players that continue to get snubbed, which is not, for some of these guys, it's been ongoing for some time, like Alexander McGillney. I don't know what McGillney's going to do to get in. Really starting to wonder if it's just because he's Russian or what it is. I don't know what he did to upset people in that selection committee, but to me, McGillney should have been in a long time ago. Keith Tkachuk is another player who I think should be in there. Other guys like Rod Brindamore, certainly, by many, I guess, would say some debate that he should be and shouldn't be, so kind of like a fringe one. Patrick Elias, another one, also kind of close there too. So kind of feel bad for some of those guys, but in a sense, with the players that were first-time eligible this year, it wasn't as strong of a group outside of Lundqvist, so they certainly are kind of playing catch-up a little bit. And obviously, there wasn't a lot of goalies in the Hall of Fame, too, so they certainly had a field day today, electing Barrasso, Lundqvist, and Vernon in a goalie position all into the Hockey Hall of Fame. So, of course, the actual induction ceremony takes place November 10th and 11th, so obviously that'll be in the fall, but that is your 2023 Hockey Hall of Fame class. I would certainly love to know everybody's opinions on these selections, and based on the players who didn't get in, is there any other people that you think should have been in over these players? I would certainly like to hear a debate down in the comment section for sure. We have several signings today, including the St. Louis Blues announcing they've signed Adam Gaudette to a 1-year, 2-way contract. Gaudette's bounced around to a handful of teams now after leaving Vancouver. Most recently was with the Leafs. Spent mostly with the Marlies. It's a 1-year, 2-way for him. The Blue Jackets have signed Matthew Olivier. He gets a 2-year contract, a $1.1 million average annual value, so he'll be a full-time NHLer most likely. The Tampa Bay Lightning signed Gabriel Fortier. He gets a 1-year deal at $775. And the Arizona Coyotes have signed Michael Cartoni, who is a 2-year deal, a 1-way contract as well at $775. He is expected to be a full-time member of the Coyotes roster heading into next season as well. Some other news around the league include the New York Rangers making another addition to their coaching staff. Of course, they hired head coach Peter Laviolette. We had found out that his first addition to the coaching staff was Michael Pekka, and now they're also adding Dan Muse. Of course, he will be an assistant coach with the Rangers. He's worked with Laviolette before in Nashville and has a really impressive resume outside of that. He was also the head coach for Team USA in the U18 tournament, which he led to gold this past year in 2023. He's won championships as a head coach in the USHL, as well in the U.S. college hockey scene, where he was the head coach for Yale. So multiple championships in different levels. And he also worked as well, like I said, with Laviolette before. So, he's got a well-rounded resume, and it will be a great addition, I think, to the Rangers organization. So good pickup there. And of course, they still have Benoit there as the goalie coach. So I think they're probably done in the Rangers organization filling out the coaching staff. You never know, they may add another body there, but I think they're probably done. And also a good piece of news as well out of GM Bill Zito with the Florida Panthers. So we know Spencer Knight left the organization for personal reasons, went into the player assistance program earlier this year, missed, I think it was probably most of the second half of the year. Obviously was not with them for their great playoff run all the way to the Stanley Cup final. But he did confirm that Spencer Knight is doing well, and he is expected to rejoin the team and will be part of the franchise again in training camp. So that's certainly nice to hear and good to see. I hope Spencer Knight is doing well. There was a picture that surfaced recently with him and a bunch of his former Team USA buddies at, I think it was either a concert or an event recently. So he seemed like he was doing okay, and good to hear from Zito that that's definitely the case. In Winnipeg, we know they're going to be a fascinating team to watch, and certainly, lots of speculation about what we might see. We could see a mass exodus of a lot of players there. Former captain Blake Wheeler being one of those guys. Lots of talk recently about what's going to happen with the future of Wheeler. I was kind of starting to wonder if maybe they might consider keeping him for the last year of his contract, as much as I wouldn't agree with that. I think they really need to change the culture in Winnipeg, and I think they really need to turn over a few bodies in there to really get things changed and to point it in the right direction. And I think it's time for Wheeler to move on. But they had Blake Wheeler attend a Jets fundraising event here just in the last few days. It was a pretty private, small key event too. Him and Andrew Ladd were leading it, where they got to meet with a lot of different fans and stuff, took them fishing, and it was in northern Manitoba. And there's also a contest going on with the Jets organization. I can't remember the full details, but I know you can, if you win, you have a chance to meet Blake Wheeler and be his guest at an upcoming Winnipeg Jets home game. Obviously, they could replace the player on the contest. That's not that difficult to do, but it just seems like he's been on some promotional stuff lately. So I was just like wondering, well, is there going to be a change of plans here or not? But then the speculation continues from NHL insiders that they feel like Blake Wheeler is probably done during his time here in Winnipeg. They say he won't play for them again, most likely. So essentially what's going to happen is they could explore trade, but even at a 50% cap retention, teams are going to have to be able to budget over $4 million for Wheeler's services. And as much as he can still help a team, I think he still has more to give at the NHL. He is getting older, and based on how he's played the last year or two, you got to wonder, either his heart's not in it at Winnipeg anymore, or he's just slowing down. Maybe it's a bit of both. Hard to say. Either way, trade even with 50% retention still, it may not be what's best for Winnipeg. The buyout seems cleaner and easier. They would have a 2-year cap hit of $2.5 million. So they would save almost $6 million, $5.75 million for the upcoming season, instead of having a cap hit of like over $4 on a salary retention deal. And then they'd have a cap hit next year as well. Then he could be a UFA, and he would have a lot more options. Teams would sign him cheaper, on a 1 to 2 year deal, a couple $1 million a year, something like that. I think he would be able to live up to that and be a good help and a different role on a team that might be looking to add a veteran to try to, really make a run for it. So to me, I think a Blake Wheeler buyout makes a ton of sense. When I did a video back, I think it was last weekend, with my top buyout candidates, I did have him on that list, and right now speculation seems to indicate it's trending in that direction. They have until June 30th, so we'll see in the next few days if Winnipeg decides to process this buyout for him. Now, onto a variety of different trade and UFA rumors. One thing with the Maple Leafs to watch for is I know a lot of people were under the impression that Ryan O'Reilly was pretty much done and wouldn't be returning to the Leafs. And now Pierre LeBrun on TSN recently was talking about the fact that they've learned that that's not necessarily the case. Apparently, O'Reilly and his agent have not closed the door on returning to Toronto, and there have been some ongoing talks, and there is a possibility that he does stay in Toronto. They've also been having talks with Luke Schenn. Apparently, there was word a few days ago there were some insiders thought things were getting really close to a deal getting done with Schenn, but now it appears not to be the case. So whatever progress they were making, they seem to have run into some snags. I don't know if it's term, money, what it is, but it's not guaranteed that it works out for him to stay either, but it's certainly possible. Still, they're interested on both sides. It's just a matter of making it work. As I mentioned before, it's believed guys like Kerfoot and Hall and Bunting likely don't return, but at least now there's still a chance O'Reilly stays, but we'll have to see if the money can work out. That's going to be a big thing here for the Leafs here, of course. Moving forward, onto some trade talk. The Calgary Flames are going to be a very interesting team to watch. And probably within Canada, Calgary and Winnipeg are probably going to be your most two fascinating teams. They have the potential to both make several moves given where things are at. Like I said, the Jets, of course, have, PLD, Hellebuyck, Scheifele, Wheeler, all possible trade, that might be moving. And the Flames have a long list of pending UFAs that could go too. Looking at Hanifin and Lindholm, especially being some big names there. Hanifin, it sounds like, is pretty much, I wouldn't say he's a goner, but it sounds pretty close. I think a Hanifin trade is extremely likely at this point. Out of all the pending UFAs in Calgary, I think he's the most likely to go. With Elias Lindholm, there definitely is interest to stay from what we're hearing. NHL insiders are saying that Lindholm has indicated to the team that he's willing to talk extension. He's interested, but he kind of wants to see more of a long-term vision and kind of determine, I guess, if he feels like the team is going to be competitive enough and have a chance to win. So there's a little bit more to it. If it comes to the point that either negotiations aren't going well or he decides that he does want to move on, then again, I wonder if that's going to impact the Flames' decision on where to go with the direction of the team. Because in trading Hanifin and Lindholm, that's a top-line center and a top-paired defenseman. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to go into a rebuild, but it does make you wonder if they're going to have to pivot and make some other tough decisions. You got Michael Backlund, Tyler Toffoli also in the same kind of predicament. We don't know if right now how they're feeling, if they're going to extend or be moved, or how the team feels. There's lots of questions there in Calgary. And another name to watch, of course, is goalie Dan Vladar. We did get word through, I think it was TSN Insider Trade, saying that, and I think Elliot Friedman actually touched on the same thing during the 32 Thoughts podcast as well, that Jacob Markstrom, even though there was some talk that they might talk to Markstrom about moving because he has a full no-move clause, that's not going to be the case. Markstrom is not going to be moving. So the main goalie that will go to make room for Dustin Wolf will be Dan Vladar. I know a name to watch with Vladar could be the Anaheim Ducks, especially if they do trade John Gibson. Of course, lots of speculation about him being possibly moved to other teams, so certainly look for that as a possible landing spot. There will be others as well, but the Ducks have been connected to Vladar if Gibson does indeed move on. Now, the Seattle Kraken, of course, are going to be an interesting team to watch, trying to see if they can build on that second season where they took a major jump forward, made the playoffs, won a round, came really close to going to the third round even, because in round 2 they lost in game 7. But Carson Soucy was a big part of their blue line. It is a pending UFA, and it seems like they might be tough to keep him. I mean, they obviously don't have a ton of cap space, but they do have some flexibility. But at the same time, they got to pay Vince Dunn, who, of course, is going to be getting a big raise. This will be a long-term deal for Dunn. So they want to probably get that done first, and they may not have that done with enough time to really negotiate Soucy into the mix, or can they even? He might be able to command more money, and it's believed that the Vancouver Canucks have heavy interest in Soucy. We know that the Canucks actually have their eye on a few different defensemen. We'll talk about Vancouver here a little bit more shortly, but to look for the Seattle Kraken, if they lose Soucy as an unrestricted free agent, one name that they're connected to is Montreal Canadian defenseman Joel Edmondson. Obviously Edmondson also, well experienced, has good size, long reach, a little bit of a different style, but can play, similar enough that he could probably come in a little bit cheaper for the rest of his contract and be able to, give a similar service to the Kraken for less money. So certainly look for Montreal. It's well known Montreal has names on the market, including Edmondson, Hoffman, Armia, and a few others. And Edmondson was really close to going at the deadline. He probably would have been dealt had he played more and teams could have been more comfortable with his health. And now a trade is not much more likely now. So look for Seattle to maybe be one of those teams. There's certainly other teams interested too, but it makes a lot of sense that if they lose Susie, they might be able to get Edmondson to come in and get a similar defenseman for less money. So that could work out. I know in Detroit, there's been talk about Alex DeBrincat, of course, being a Michigan native, but another name that apparently the Red Wings also have a lot of interest in is Flyers forward Travis Konecny. He has been connected to the Red Wings, and they apparently been having a lot of conversations. To me, a Konecny trade might be a little bit cheaper than a DeBrincat trade. Konecny is going to bring a different element as well, a little bit of a different style, can play more of a rugged, in-your-face, power forward type of game. He's not the biggest guy, but he can certainly play. Like I said, he's not afraid to get mixed up into the rough stuff and kind of, play that style of game, even though he's not the biggest guy. But that is a player that Detroit is heavily interested in. Would they move a first-round pick for him? I'm not so sure. But they certainly have some prospects and maybe a second-round pick or more. I'm not sure exactly what it would take to pry Konecny out of Philly, but we know they're having tons of conversations. We talked about before that Daniel Briere is extremely busy on several players, with Konecny being one of them. To me, they're not actively pushing to sell Konecny, but if they get an offer that's really good, they're probably going to do it. And Detroit is pushing, and it would make a lot of sense that he would be a good fit there. When it comes to Pierre-Luc Dubois, I know there's a lot of talk about Montreal, and we're not going to go into that today, but I know TSN insider Darren Dreger was saying that if Dubois is not traded, to look for Dubois to probably sit out instead of playing. He's not signing anything from what the word is now in Winnipeg. He won't even sign a one-year deal to get the free agency, that he's just not going to play. It's just that simple. So Winnipeg, at this point, they're not going to have any leverage. They're not going to have any choice but to trade him. And to me, that's only going to benefit Montreal, because if the Winnipeg Jets don't find a deal that they're really comfortable, that gives them a really nice return from another team, and Montreal's kind of sitting there waiting, they're not going to give up a whole heck of a lot, and they're going to be like, take it or leave it. And it's just that simple. And if he's going to sit out, that he'd be a UFA down the road eventually anyways. Like, it's just going to cause more problems. So they're probably going to be forced to trading him for a lot less than they ever hoped to. And I can see it happening. The way he's acted and kind of pushed his way through a couple of teams now, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Dubois threatens to sit out if he's not traded, kind of lowering his value even more. Now in Vancouver, with the Allred Ekman-Larsson buyout, and that's going to create space. We know that that's done with the intent of using that space for good. We know that they want to rebuild their blue line. The other big news in Vancouver is not only did they buy out Ekman-Larsson, create roster space and cap flexibility, but there's a good chance, apparently, according to Canucks media, that Ethan Bear may not get a qualifying offer. Now, he's going to be out for some time. He went to the World Championships and hurt his shoulder, and he's going to be out for the first couple months of the season. Even if he is qualifying, he won't be able to play for a little bit. But there is a possibility here because of the injury that they're not going to qualify him, and that could create a bigger hole in their blue line. Now, if they don't qualify Bear and they bought out Ekman-Larsson, that pretty much guarantees that Tyler Myers stays because they can't replace, you wouldn't think anyways, easily, that many defensemen on their blue line. I mean, unless they continue to work at it, but it's not going to be easy to replace 3 of your top 4 D. So obviously, good chance Myers rides out the remaining part of this contract, but still, like, it makes you wonder who they're targeting. Like I said, a couple of names of the watch in Vancouver when it comes to defense, now that they have some flexibility there. Carson Soucy, pending UFA out of Seattle. If he makes it there, they're going to be very much in the mix there. As far as trades goes, Noah Hanifin in Calgary, they'll be interested there too, although I'm not convinced Hanifin will want to go there. Personally, I mean, I'm not. This is just my own personal speculation. I haven't heard this from an NHL insider, but I would suspect that Hanifin likely won't want to play elsewhere in Canada, that he's likely going to want to head back closer to home in the northeastern part of the U.S., but that's just my gut feeling on that. We'll see. And another name to watch would be Jerard. I know the Vancouver Canucks not necessarily have been connected to this player, but the Colorado Avalanche, we know, are likely going to move a defenseman to bring in a scoring forward. And I do wonder if Vancouver would be a good fit where they could trade Jerard for a guy like Brock Besser. Now, I know I reported before that Brock Besser had requested the Canucks to stay, and I believe that to be true, but it doesn't mean that's going to happen. Now, would the Avalanche take a chance on Besser? He's got a little bit more money on his contract than Jerard does, at least on an AAV perspective. The term on Gerard's a little bit longer. I don't know that the Avalanche would want to trade for a different player. I don't know that they'd want Garland. I don't see that happening. Could they maybe look at JT Miller? I guess it's possible. I wouldn't rule it out 100%. I just don't think it's super likely given the long-term mega contract he just signed. But I do wonder if they'd take a chance on a guy like Besser with Landeskog being out for the entire season. Would that make sense? A Jerard for Besser deal? To me, they might have to add more than Besser because Besser has not lived up to his contract, where Gerard's been a real solid defenseman for the kind of money that he earns. So maybe it's Jerard for Besser and something else. I don't know. But to me, that does make some sense. If they're going to move for a D, they have a guy there that could certainly help them change up their mix, get Besser a fresh start with some different offensive players. Maybe if he gets on the line with McKinnon, Rantanen, those guys, maybe he can find his scoring touch again. And not that he's not playing with good players, but between guys like Miller and Pettersson, etc. But, maybe it's time for a change to get things changed up. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Down in the comments, we'll talk about it further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.